When I was 16 years old, I experienced my first real heartbreak. My girlfriend at the time decided to end our relationship, and I reacted in a way that I now look back on with a mixture of embarrassment and understanding. I was devastated, convinced that I was in love and couldn't possibly live without her. In my desperation, I begged her to change her mind, pleading for another chance. I was, to put it bluntly, pathetic. Now, at 25, I can see how naive and immature I was back then. That experience, as painful as it was, taught me a valuable lesson about self-respect and the nature of relationships. I made a promise to myself that I would never again allow myself to be in such a vulnerable, desperate position. I vowed to maintain my dignity and self-worth, regardless of the status of my romantic relationships. In the years since that first heartbreak, I've had several relationships and a few casual encounters. Each time a relationship has ended, I've felt sad. That's natural and human. But I've never again felt that overwhelming sense of desperation and weakness that characterized my teenage breakup. I've learned to process my emotions in a healthier way, to understand that the end of a relationship, while painful, is not the end of the world. This brings me to my current situation, which has left me questioning whether I've perhaps swung too far in the opposite direction. I've been in a relationship with a woman for the past year and a half. We met at a networking event for professionals in our industry. The connection was immediate and strong. We hit it off right away, finding common ground in our career aspirations and shared interests. What started as casual meetups quickly evolved into more frequent dates, and before long, we decided to make our relationship exclusive. Our relationship progressed naturally and comfortably. We enjoyed each other's company, supported each other's career goals, and gradually integrated our lives. We met each other's friends who approved of our relationship. We shared our hopes and dreams, our fears and insecurities. It felt like we were building something real and lasting. As our relationship deepened, we started discussing the possibility of moving in together. It seemed like a logical next step, both emotionally and practically. Our city is notoriously expensive, and combining our living arrangements would allow us to save a significant amount of money. We spent countless evenings weighing our options. Her apartment was more spacious, but I owned my place outright. We discussed the pros and cons of each option, considering factors like commute times, neighborhood preferences, and the logistics of combining our belongings. These conversations about cohabitation were exciting, but also a bit daunting. Moving in together is a big step, and we both wanted to ensure we were making the right decision. We talked about our expectations, our habits, and how we envisioned our day-to-day life together. It felt like we were on the same page, both committed to taking our relationship to the next level. That's why what happened last weekend caught me completely off guard. We were having what I thought was another conversation about our plans to move in together when she suddenly changed the subject. "I think we're moving too fast," she said, her tone serious and her expression unreadable. At first, I wasn't too concerned. I understood that the prospect of moving in together could be overwhelming, and I was open to slowing things down if that's what she needed. "Okay, no problem," I replied, try to be understanding. "We haven't made any concrete plans yet, so we could take a step back if you're feeling unsure." But her response to my understanding was not what I expected. Instead of seeming relieved, she became agitated. "No, you don't understand," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I want to break up. I'm not sure you're all in on this relationship." I was stunned. Just moments ago, we had been discussing our future together, and now she was talking about ending our relationship entirely. It felt like emotional whiplash. Despite my shock, I managed to keep my composure. "Okay," I said, my voice calm despite the turmoil I felt inside. "If that's what you want, I understand." My measured response seemed to upset her even more. She burst out, "Don't you care? Aren't you going to fight for us?" And that's when I realized what was happening. This wasn't a genuine desire to end our relationship. It was a test. She wanted to see if I would fight for her, to prove my commitment by begging her to stay. In that moment, I felt a complex mix of emotions: disappointment, frustration, and a deep sense of betrayal. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I knew I had to do. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice firm but not unkind, "but I don't appreciate mind games. If you want to end our relationship, I respect your decision. I'll box up anything of yours that might be at my place, and you can pick it up whenever it's convenient for you." Her reaction to my response was explosive. She accused me of being a cold-hearted asshole who was only using her for sex. Her words stung, not because they were true, but because they were so far from the truth. I had genuinely cared for her, had envisioned a future with her. I wasn't ready to propose marriage or anything that's serious yet, but I had thought she might be the one. We had met each other's families, for crying out loud. She had spent last Christmas with my family, charming my parents and bonding with my sister. I had loved her, or at least I thought I had. In the days following our breakup, I found myself questioning everything about our relationship. Were there signs I missed? Had I somehow now given her reason to doubt my commitment? Or was this test a reflection of her own insecurities rather than any failing on my part? The situation has been made more complicated by the reactions of my family. My parents called me, concerned after hearing about the breakup from my ex. When I explained what had happened, they were sympathetic but also suggested that perhaps I was being too stubborn. They reminded me of how well she had fit into our family, how much they had enjoyed her company at Christmas. My mother, ever the peacemaker, gently suggested that perhaps I should consider giving her another chance. My younger sister's reaction was even more pointed. She called me, not to offer support, but to tell me in no uncertain terms that I was being a complete jerk for not forgiving my ex. She argued that everyone makes mistakes, and that throwing away a year-and-a-half long relationship over one misstep was short-sighted and cruel. Their reactions have left me feeling conflicted and somewhat isolated. On one hand, I understand their perspective. They had welcomed my ex into our family, had seen how happy we were together. From their point of view, I'm letting a good relationship slip away over what they perceive as a minor issue. But they weren't there. They didn't see the look in her eyes when she realized her test had backfired. They didn't hear the venom in her voice when she accused me of using her. And they don't understand the promise I made to myself all those years ago, the vow to never again reduce myself to begging someone to love me. I keep coming back to that moment when I was 16, crying myself to sleep over a girl who didn't want me anymore. I remember the hollow ache in my chest, the feeling that my world was ending. I remember promising myself that I would never allow myself to be that vulnerable, that desperate again. But now I find myself wondering, have I overcorrected? In my determination to protect myself from that kind of pain, have I built walls too high? Am I letting my past experiences cloud my judgment in the present? Part of me wonders if I should have reacted differently. Maybe I should have shown more emotion, expressed more distress at the thought of losing her. But another part of me is angry that I was put in this position at all. Relationships should be built on trust and open communication, not tests and mind games. I'm left questioning everything. Was our entire relationship just a prelude to this test? Were all those conversations about moving in together, all those plans we made, just part of an elaborate setup? The thought makes me feel used and manipulated. At the same time, I can't help but wonder if I'm overreacting. Is this really worth ending our relationship over? Am I letting my pride and my past experiences prevent me from fighting for something worthwhile? But then I remind myself of the fundamental breach of trust that her test represents. Healthy relationships aren't built on manipulation and games. If she had doubts about my commitment, she should have talked to me openly and honestly. Instead, she chose to manufacture a crisis to test my reaction. As I sit here, turning the situation over and over in my mind, I find myself at a crossroads. Part of me wants to stand firm in my decision, to show that I won't tolerate such manipulative behavior in a relationship. But another part of me wonders if I'm making a mistake, if I'm letting a good relationship slip away because of one misstep. I know that relationships require work and forgiveness. No one is perfect, and we all make mistakes. But where do we draw the line? At what point does standing up for oneself become stubbornness? When does forgiveness become a form of enabling bad behavior? These are the questions that keep me up at night. I find myself replaying our relationship in my mind, searching for clues I might have missed, signs that might have predicted this outcome. But all I can see is the woman I thought I knew, the future I thought we were building together. In the end, I keep coming back to that promise I made to myself. I refuse to be that heartbroken teenager again, begging someone to love me. I've worked hard to build my self-respect and to understand my own worth. Can I really compromise that for someone who is willing to play games with our relationship? So I find myself asking, am I the asshole here? Am I being too harsh, too unforgiving? Or am I simply standing up for myself and my boundaries? Is it wrong to expect honesty and straightforward communication in a relationship? Am I justified in walking away from a relationship that resorted to tests and manipulation? Or am I throwing away something valuable over a forgivable mistake? As I sit here, surrounded by the remnants of our relationship, photos, gifts, shared memories, I can't help but feel a profound sense of loss. But I also feel a sense of resolve. I may have lost someone I cared about, but I haven't lost myself. And in the end, isn't that the most important thing?